I had prepared it took me a week to prepare a special message for this week because there's so much in this portion. It's amazing. Vayakhel. But then when I was listening to the news about the war now in Ukraine, I said, oh my goodness, we need to really pray for the people. That's where my great grandparents came from. They came from there in 1906. And I thank God that they had the courage to pick up 9 children and come to a country they'd never been to. And because of them, really, we were spared from going through the Holocaust. The terrible thing is that they were forced to leave because of the pogroms. And, they were the lie, the fake news that was being spread at that time was that Christian children were being kidnapped by Jews and they were using their blood to make matzah. Now, if you can believe that, I think you can believe anything. It's such craziness. And when I look at what's happening in the world now, I was thinking of this war is not new. The world has been at war since Cain and Abel. And we've been blessed to live in a peaceful country, but whether we realize it or not, we've been in a war for the past several years. There's been biological and viral war for 2 years, which has forced us into isolation. And the people who we trusted, who we voted into power, have slowly been revoking our freedoms. And the worst war that we're experiencing now, believe it or not, is the war against words, the war against free speech, the war against what we're allowed to teach our children, what we can't teach our children. And what people don't realize, that this is setting the stage for his Torah, for God's word, his word, and especially his 10 words, his 10 commandments, to become the enemy. So ultimately, it is a war against the master of the universe. Now, I don't want to listen to the words of all the modern day prophets who want to tell us that we're entering Armageddon. There's so many out there now, or that we're now beginning the war of Gog and Magog. Because if these prophets are wrong, the Torah says we need to stone them. So I prefer really to listen to what our Hebrew prophets tell us. And they help us to read the times. Now, if you look at what's going on now, and we think back of Noah, God destroyed the world then because every imagination of the heart of man was evil. And violence was everywhere. It's funny, in Hebrew, violence is Hamas. Well, we know Hamas is not everywhere, not yet. And then we read about the story of Lot, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, when Abram prayed to spare the cities if there were at least 10 righteous men. Well, there weren't. So he destroyed it. But as far as I can see, we haven't reached that level yet because there are 10 righteous men. We haven't reached that level of evil. And there was one prophecy that is given in the prophet Ezekiel, when he tells us that before this last war, when our enemies will come up against Israel from the north, they will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages. I will come upon them that are quiet, that dwell in safety, all of them dwelling without walls, without having bars or gates. Well, that's not the case with Israel today. So that day will come, but that day is not today. So those days are described both in Judaism and Christianity as Chevlei HaMashiach, the birth pangs of the Messiah. The world's birth pains are not strong enough yet. But let us look at what we can do today to be part of the healing of the world, so that we can be part of bringing in Tikkun Olam. What is our place? I had a revelation when I was in my teens, and I've lived by it all my life. It's seeking out the root of the problem instead of constantly putting Band-Aids on the results of the problems that we have. That's what the Torah does for us. It's a pattern for our behavior. It shows us the root cause of disease, physical, emotional, and spiritual, that plague our world. So do we watch the news and fall apart in fear, or do we trust God? Do we continue to move forward day by day to fulfill our calling, or do we cower in fear in our small corner of the world? What is God asking this small community? You know, the good news is, as darkness grows, that's when the light can shine more brightly. That's our role in this small remnant, Shear, Yashuv, of a community here and now. We learn to live, and spread the light of Torah wherever we go. The Torah teaches us how to have shalom in our lives. Shalom is such a huge word, complete shalom. I think that's why 5 years before the rabbi passed away, the first time when he went up and he came back, he was revived. He said he had never felt such a shalom, a perfect peace. So as the Torah teaches us how to have this shalom in our lives, how to choose, we can choose to have joy. We can choose to be happy because of the free will. And that's little by little how we'll grow to trust God. Through the stories in the Torah, we learn principles of wisdom, which give us the tools to handle our daily struggles, and struggle we do. The solution to our struggles is simple. The tough part is putting them into action. Sometimes we find ourselves taking 2 steps forward and then we fall 1 step backwards, but we always are at a higher level when we do move forward. So let's see what this second to last parasha in Exodus is teaching us. Parashat Vayakhel, Here's where we see how gold is used to fashion many of the items for the construction of the Mishkan. In last week's portion, Kitisa, gold was also used, but this time to fashion a golden calf. Same gold, but each time kadosh, set apart for a different purpose. The gold was given willingly by the Egyptians to the Israelites because God had put that on their heart. The gold had served a purpose both for good and for evil because of the gift of free will. God has given us gold in our lives, and it comes in the form of the gifts and the talents that he has placed in us. We read about Bezalel. We read it last week, where it says he was filled with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, so that he could build the Mishkan. So let's ask ourselves, am I using the gifts that God gave me, first, to give them back to him, and second, to give them to the community, both of these, with a willing heart, as it says in chapters 35 and 36, that they brought it, the Egyptians first gave it to us with a willing heart, and then everything they gave us, we brought back to build a Mishkan with a willing heart. Now, all these various items were fashioned in the Torah. We read about that. And then the Torah continues with all the injunction for the Shabbat. That was, we read last week's portion. Now this week, it begins with the Shabbat, and then it's followed by the building of the Mishkan and the calling of Bezalel, which are a mirror of the last chapter. Rabbi Percy used to say that the building of Mishkan, described before and after the story of the golden calf, was to envelop this tragic event, which was a pivotal moment in the history of our people. This shows us how great God's mercy is. No matter how much we fail, he provides a covering for us and helps us to start again. When we have that golden calf moment in our lives, and we all do, a moment when we fail, and we fail dismally, what it does, it serves to humble us and forces us to work harder to make restitution, and helps us to give back with a willing heart. Now, in these 2 parashas, the Shabbat is emphasized. It's both a covering and as a sign. The Torah repeatedly depicts that God always covers and protects his people. The Shabbat is a sign of that. Now, we've been lied to. We've been lied to saying that the Torah, the Shabbat, is only for the Jewish people. But it wasn't meant just for the Israelites. It was for the servants, for the stranger living among us, and even for the animals, which shows us God's great compassion. Remember, Israel wasn't the first to be chosen by God. Adam and Eve were the first. That was followed by Noah and Abram, just to name a few. But now Israel would be chosen for a very special purpose. And remember, Israel included those who left with us, the Erev Rav. They formed a nation, and the nation was to teach and disseminate to all the world his perfect gift, worth far more than gold, the 10 Commandments. And we would come to understand that there's only one God, that all people make up one human race, that we all come from one family, from Noah, and that all are equal in the sight of the Creator. Now, the Shabbat is a sign to all humanity that the Creator exists and that he created the world in a set amount of time. How else would the world have known that there are only 7 days in a week and not 10 or 8 or 14? The fact that some religious leaders tell us that we now worship God on Sunday shows us that they don't truly understand what the Shabbat is. They ignore that it is the fourth commandment and that it's not simply a day of worship. It is so much more. The fact that other religious leaders, like my own people, have added hundreds of regulations on how to observe the Shabbat shows that they also don't understand its true purpose. It's an ordinance, a chok, which cannot fully be understood, a sod, a mystery, which only God truly understands. For me, the sod, the mystery of the Shabbat, is that it is a day when we can fully focus our eyes on him in a way that we cannot the rest of the week. Now, focus is a key in everything in our lives, and I can't emphasize this enough. God had to change our focus from the gold that made the golden calf to the gold that built the Mishkan. If we focus on our fears and our pain and our illnesses or any of our problems more than we focus on him, all these things will continue to haunt us. Our Rabbi used to say that the Shabbat is the glue for our community, and that the tent of meeting was where the people would assemble once a week. And on the Moedim, the holidays, the feasts, which are also Shabbats. Now, although we no longer have a physical place to assemble, we can rejoice because those who don't live here in Montreal can now fully participate with us. We've been forced into living a very different paradigm. We're now a virtual assembly, but one that can be just as vital as a physical one, especially during these difficult days where many of us have been forced into isolation in our own homes. Yet even that can be used for good if we dedicate our homes to God. The priests had to wash and present themselves clean before entering the tent of meeting. It's not only about the clothes that we wear when we assemble together. In the synagogues, everybody would get all dressed up because of the way they dressed in the temple. But it's not about clothes. Excuse me. Because we dress well because we know we're coming before the King of the universe. We're inviting him into our homes. It's not about taking a shower that makes us clean. It means that we are to be like Ish Tam or Isha Tama, a man or a woman without guile. That is a full-time job. Constantly checking to see that we're not putting on an act, but that we're being as honest as we can. We're coming clean before the Creator, and we're becoming clean before each other. And we will fail, but we can start again. Believe me, our kids see through any hypocrisy. Now, in the building of the Mishkan, every type of worker was equally important, from the ones who sewed, to ones who chopped wood, to the priests who served in every Shabbat. Every person has value. Kehilat Shear Yashuv is our Mishkan. And each of us, no matter how insignificant we appear to be in the eyes of the world, each of us has great value within this community. I remember Fiddler on the Roof. Even Nachum the beggar was important. He helped others to learn what it means to give. No one is at the center of this community except our Creator. And we have a relationship with Him. And He helps us to have a relationship with each other, whether in person or on Zoom. You know, as I read the details that went into the making of everything in the Mishkan, I wondered, if the Israelites hadn't been slaves and hadn't been forced to do all types of manual labor, would they have been able to do all this intricate and at times grueling work in the middle of the hot desert? Wasn't it because my people had lost everything in the Holocaust that we were finally ready and able to fight and work so hard to build our modern state of Israel? Wasn't it because I had suffered and lost so much in my own life that now I'm so grateful for everything that God did for me? And now I'm so willing to do things to serve the one who saved me. It's vital to know that we don't guard the Shabbat, as my people believe. Shabbat guards us. If we don't observe it in the simple way that He's asking us to do, which is simply don't earn a living, don't work, we're only hurting ourselves. Put all our worries away for this one day. Believe me, they'll be there the next morning. We don't hurt Him, we're hurting ourselves. He provided this day so that we can understand that we are no longer slaves who are forced to work 7 days a week without a break, and that He restored our freedom. We are free to set this day apart in the same way that we are free to set our God apart from all the other gods in our lives. And there are many. The Shabbat was so important that Moses told us, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day shall be to you a holy day, a day set apart, solemn rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. Those are strong words, but we need to consider them from the spiritual perspective. We will be cut off from our people, from being a holy nation set apart for God. Today, many of us are crying out for freedom, and the Torah is clear about who gave us freedom, but freedom comes at a cost. Many good men and women have suffered and died in the last century fighting for our freedom. And the question is, what do we do with this freedom when we have it? True freedom demands responsibility and the willingness to serve others. We need to serve others willingly. Have we been using the freedom wisely that was won for us at such a high cost? And will we use our freedom wisely again when it is restored? If not, the next trial, the next plague will come from above, because our Creator wants more from His creation, from us. So gold was used both to fashion the holy items as well as the golden calf. The gifts and talents that the Creator has given to each of us are like gold. We can use them in whatever way we please because He gave us free will. But let's ask ourselves, how are we using them? Is it solely to fulfill our own pleasures and desires? Or are we willing to use them for a higher purpose? We were called to be part of a holy nation. Do we have the inscription, "Holy to the Lord," everywhere we are? On the doorposts of our homes, so that when we enter, we can say like Joshua did, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Is it on the handles of our cars so that when we drive, others can see that we are patient and kind? Is it on the doorposts of our workplaces, on everything we own and in everything we do? That's our challenge, and that's our process. We're not perfect, and we're going to struggle every single day. So let us try. Let us do our best to be holy, WHOLLY, entirely dedicated to the creator of the universe. And let's keep asking God to search those areas that we have placed off limits to him. Let's take this Shabbat and every other Shabbat to fully focus on him, no matter what we're doing. Even if we're sitting and reading a book or watching a movie, we don't have to be religious about it, but to allow him to dwell among us in our homes, in our community. And this helps us to know that he is our covering, he is our protector, and that we are safe. It sets the stage for the rest of the week until the following Shabbat. And it allows us to bring his shalom to all who know us. Shabbat shalom.